Okay, so Santosh pointed to a number of things that benefits that can be gained from data using data in healthcare, but he also pointed to some challenges, and this is why I'm really excited to have our next speaker, because one of the things that Santosh mentioned was some organizations spend too much time, too much effort in data collection and not enough in data analysis and organizational strategy. So to help us figure out how to address that challenge, I'd like to welcome Raghavan Srinivas, or Rags, an architect at DataStax. And Rags, you're going to tell us about how to actually manage an open data stack. I'll just ask you to share your screen for a moment. Or you are sharing your screen. I think we need to make sure that it's in full screen mode.
All right. Does that look good? Thanks, John. Can you
Is
can you
that
guys still
in
hear?
quite? I see a couple of black bands, top and bottom. Is it completely in full screen mode?
It is in full screen mode. Yes.
Okay.
Should I do something?
All right. Okay. No,
Let me.
you're right. Over to you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, John. I think his point about kind of what do you do with data and what do you do with data that you can kind of make it actionable and so on is a problem that the industry is trying to address, right? So what we are trying to do at DataStax, and I'm going to talk about what DataStax is and what Apache Cassandra is. I'm going to follow up my talk with a workshop, and in that workshop, we typically do like 2-hour workshops every week. So obviously I can't do a whole lot in 40 minutes, but in the next 20 minutes, I'm just going to kind of cover what does it mean, especially from an interoperability perspective. If you take the example of Apollo Hospital that was covered, in the previous session, you may be getting input from different, devices, right? You may be able to, be getting information from like government, or regulated industries and so on, insurance, credit card processing, and all that. So all of this kind of almost makes it, incumbent that you need to have an open data stack, and that's kind of what I'm going to talk about. I'm a fan of the distributed systems, because again, I mean, like it or not, I mean, we all live in a world where it's all distributed, right? Just going back to my SBI branch in Ninth Block, Jayanagar, in Bangalore, right? Everything has changed. It was no longer that they would put entries in the passbook and so on. Now I may be able to do some things, outside that branch, because everything is wired up and all that. But to be able to do that, you need to be able to have some amount of what I call as infrastructure or artifacts or patterns, design patterns, to make it happen, right? So applications, if you think from like a CEO or from a CTO perspective, there's different forces that are coming together right now. One of them is like obviously these rush to APIs, right? Everybody wants to provide an API, and for good reason, because using those APIs makes it easier, to be able to process the data. Then of course, there's microservices, which are kind of like the extension of APIs, if you will, but kind of do it in a way that each service does one thing and one thing alone very well, right? Then you put on top of that, you have the virtualization VMs, which are kind of slowly getting phased away to containers, right? Containers are kind of ephemeral, if you will, and then the whole thing is sitting on top of what is called as infrastructure. So you have the concept of immutable infrastructure, and then of course, as Nicholas Wirth, a Swiss scientist, pointed out, really, if you look at the world, it's really about programs plus, I'm sorry, this data structures plus algorithms is equal to programs, right? So if you think about that, data is the key part of it, And then, of course, there's this algorithms which are sitting either as APIs, microservices, on containers, and so on. So what I think what we are striving to do in DataStax is to be able to build this kind of pipeline, or be part of the ecosystem, where you can essentially use data from different consumers, send it to different producers, and so on. And correspondingly, you'll see how our data stack is going to shape up. I kind of say this, and I really mean this, is that we are really living in a golden age of developers. Developers are making everything right. I mean, if you want to go back a few years back, and think about the iStore, right? And basically Apple's concept of kind of like using apps. I mean, today we just take apps for granted, right? And who wrote it? Somebody like you and me, as a developer, right? Then of course we have the data API gateway, and then of course we have database and streaming and stream processing. And streaming and stream processing, again, is a very generic way of kind of being able to build your applications. Because what you can do is like, taking the example of healthcare. I would be interested in a particular topic. I can subscribe to that particular topic, and then whoever is doing something in that particular area is going to send this to the topic, and maybe there are multiple people who are looking into it, and they're going to do something and send it across. One of the things that I also talk about is like Kubernetes is it has just taken over the world. So if your data stack or whatever, or whatever stack, application stack is not on top of Kubernetes, you probably need to take a second look at it, right? Then, of course, there's object storage. We ourselves, with Cassandra, and we'll see that in a second, essentially use like object storage called Minio, which essentially is a multi-cloud solution. So if you think about Kubernetes again, it's multi-cloud. It's there, whether it's on Google, whether it's on Azure, whether it's on AWS, which is EKS. It doesn't really matter. It's built on top of open source. It's enterprise security and governance, and all those boxes that most CEOs and CTOs would like to tick off, because if you don't have this, it's going to be an issue. Kubernetes kind of provides the cross-platform compatibility, right? So if I'm moving from cloud to cloud, for whatever reason, there are a number of retail, like for example, Target, right? Who do not want to put their solutions on AWS for whatever reason. So, if you build it on Kubernetes, you can really move from wherever to wherever, right? So really, the modernizing the open data stack is modernizing the data and application. It really is empowering developers to build applications. Okay, so the idea is that if you provide some of these APIs, and you can string them all together to build a pretty complex solution. But one of the key things about all of this is that you need to be able to act in real time, right? Even if you are like a banking application, if you take the example of banking versus healthcare, I recently had to wire some money from US to India, and I immediately got a fraud alert. Of course, I was able to clear it and tell the bank that it was a legitimate transaction. But if you don't catch it in real time, it's going to be a problem, right? So you need to be able to do that. And one of the things about Cassandra is that it's really a very powerful real time application. Very low latency, and we'll see all that in a second. So if you want to look at this, as a technical leader, I need to be able to modernize my data platforms. There are several forces that are coming together, right? But I need to be able to mitigate the deployment risk. So that's why, a lot of people have told me, Kubernetes is great because, for some reason, if I don't like GKE, Google Cloud, I can move to, Azure. And if you attend some of my other talks, you will see that I have multi-cloud demos and multi-cloud solutions running as well. You also need to be able to drive team productivity. Kubernetes did a lot to to make things portable. But at the same time, it's what is referred to as the inner loop, right? Where I'm continuously building applications, and I need to be able to do this in a very productive manner. Be able to do this fast and so on. But at the other side, there is still, you need to be able to manage the infrastructure and costs. Okay, nobody has an unlimited budget. Everybody knows that. Even Microsoft, right? Or any of the FANG, like Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google. Really, nobody does, right? So you need to be able to simplify the operations, and need to be able to find and keep the talent. And I kind of jokingly refer to this, but the good thing about open source is that even though you may change companies, you may actually be working on the same thing. And that is actually good from an industry perspective, because finding and retaining talent is a lot easier, rather than kind of doing something which is very non-portable, very company specific. I'm not saying that that's doesn't exist, but I think it's much easier to have an open data stack, and kind of work on top of that. So it's developer ready. It's designed for new apps for tomorrow. And again, from if I have to put on my developer hat on, essentially, we provide what is referred to as a unifying APIs, target API, and I'll go into details of that later. But each developer has their own flavor of kind of looking at data, right? Of slicing and dicing the data. So you can use SQL, you can use document API, you can use GraphQL, and we'll see all of that in action in the next workshop that I'm going to do. But essentially, there are a bunch of modern data APIs, including gRPC, and then all of this, like I said, layered on top of Kubernetes. Sometimes, I might be managing the infrastructure myself, right? But other times, we have an option called database as a service called Astra, where you don't do anything. You're completely hands off, and that's where you mitigate all the risks and let somebody else that manage that for you. So this kind of how it looks, and like I said, it could be on premises or self-managed, or it could be in the cloud and completely managed for you. Okay, so you don't really need to do anything. You kind of pay as you go. And as a cloud native developer, that's fantastic, because I don't need to worry about infrastructure at the lower level, right? I don't need to worry about scaling. I don't need to worry about like disaster recovery. I don't need to worry about high availability. All of that is taken care of for you, right? On the on-premises or the self-managed side, if you want more control for whatever reason, let's say you're a healthcare and you may not be ready to move to the cloud just yet, it doesn't matter. We provide pretty much all of these different kind of deployments, if you will, right? And it's exactly the same, and you will see in some of my demos, it kind of works the same, whether you're using the database as a service, or whether you're using your own self-managed DataStax enterprise, as we call it. So it's modern data APIs, dynamic data for apps and services. You can do key value, you can do tabular, you can do time series, you can do white column, and so on. Cool thing, it's multi-cloud and cloud native, right? That's exactly what we want. And there are a number of ecosystem connection integrations that we worked on. The APIs are there, and I think that's not complete either. The document API, the REST API, the GraphQL API, the SQL, and you can also use gRPC. We primarily have two product lines, if you will. One is based on the Apache Cassandra, and the other one is based on Apache Pulsar. Both completely open. One does a great job with respect to data access. The other does a great job with respect to data exchange, if you will, because what it does is uses the streaming and be able to really connect applications in a very decoupled manner. Um, which is one of the patterns that works really well with distributed systems. So this is the part that I was talking to you about, which is makes it a way to connect multiple applications together, although they may not be they're all pretty much independent applications. So it's called CDC, or it's called Change Data Capture, and this was introduced recently. Essentially, the idea behind this is that you may have a system of record. Let's say Apache Cassandra is a system of record, but you may want to for example use Snowflake for doing analytics, or maybe use something else like Google BigQuery, right? Anything on the other side is possible. What we can do, or maybe even Apache, Cassandra itself, but maybe it's this time it's on-prem or something, right? You may be filtering, you may be doing any of these. So in this ecosystem, we still play by using this change data capture. And essentially what Pulsar does is, you subscribe to topics, and based on the topics, you can send some updates, and you have this producer consumer kind of decoupled manner in which distributed systems work. So this kind of talks about the same thing as well. How it works. It essentially has these different subscriptions that you can subscribe to, and you can keep the data always up to date. We realize that even though Apache Cassandra is great and Astra is great, Astra is the database as a service that that essentially has the Apache Cassandra in it, right? Including the Stargate, like I said, the different APIs and so on, and then the streaming, which essentially does the change data capture, maybe between an Astra and a DataStax enterprise, or maybe between really like a Mongo and a DataStax enterprise, or it really doesn't matter. So, this kind of summarizes all of the different APIs. And again, from a CEO, CTO perspective, this is pretty, important, because, each group, if you think about microservices, the whole concept of microservices is this concept of this two pizza teams, where each team has their own strength, so to say. So you may have groups which are really good at GraphQL, who really don't want to do anything with gRPC, but there is another group which is doing gRPC. And the nice thing about Astra is that it kind of has a unifying API for all of this. And typically what you do is you use what are referred to as CRUD-based operations, or CRUD-based transactions, which is create, read, update, and delete, right? And pretty much with create, read, update, and delete, you can solve pretty much any problem in the world, right? Again, going back to Nicholas' word, it's really about algorithms plus data structures. Algorithms is kind of the APIs that you provide, and the data is the data itself, right? Okay. So really cool logos here. You can see a lot of big ones, right? And I've talked to some of the customers myself, and I'm really surprised. Some of them mentioned that they have never rebooted the Cassandra cluster in 8 years. I hope they've been doing upgrades and all that. I know they are, but the point is that it just keeps on ticking. And one of the things they also share about is the linear scalability, right? If you think about the pet versus cattle, where you had this nice little box that you used to take care of, it can grow only to a certain degree, but pretty soon you've got to get to a model where it's about horizontal scaling, where you can kind of do this on multiple commodity hardware, and that's exactly what we do. But the nice thing about Cassandra, Apache Cassandra, and DataStax Enterprise, and all that, is that it's actually linearly scalable. So if you put two, it doubles. If you put four, it goes four. Lot of other systems, they basically kind of top off at some point, but not with Apache Cassandra. It keeps on going. And this is really what I have heard from the customers. This is really about actual boots on the ground experience. um, I have a workshop following this presentation, but essentially the data stack kind of mouthful to say, is Kubernetes based. Remember, Apache Cassandra predated the cloud. Okay, and I'm going to talk about this in the workshop because that's really my passion. It's developer ready. Whether you install it on your own prem or whether you use Astra, we still provide you with the Stargate APIs, because it's all about the cloud native kind of way of programming, right? So it is cloud delivered. I myself have installs on all the three major cloud providers, that is Google, Azure, and of course, AWS as well, right? So all three are there. And one of the nice things about Apache Cassandra is that once you set up the networking to make it happen, it just kind of builds a bigger cluster. So you can have a multi-cloud cluster. And actually, I'm doing this talk in KCD Chennai, which is the Kubernetes community days in Chennai in about a month or maybe 3 weeks. So if you're interested in multi-cloud, take a look at that. If you're interested in a workshop following this presentation where I'm going to dive deep into some of these REST APIs and so on, please feel free to attend my talk, which is coming up in about
Yeah.
right now in about 2 minutes. And with that, I
So,
really want to
Rags,
thank you very much.
yeah, Rags, thank you very much. And you are right. 20 minutes, not enough time to do justice to this topic, which is why people who want to know more and how to actually build the data stack should attend your workshop, which is going to immediately follow this. So you're going to go straight from here to the workshop area. So much as I think we've got some great speakers for the rest of this track, if you are interested in diving deeper into the open data stack, then it's a really good idea to follow Rags to the workshop section and attend his workshop. And I think that particularly the points you made, Rags, about APIs being part of a developer's toolkit, and that open source is portable, that carries over. I think a lot of people are interested in, well, what is open source versus what is proprietary, and where can I take this? What is a transferable skill that I can take with me? And the data API gateway that you showed, and I guess the range of APIs that you can use to access and manage this open data stack. So thanks very much, Rags.
Yeah, thank you, John. Really enjoyed it, and hopefully I can go to the workshop and be there on time, and hopefully see some of you there. All right, thank you.
Okay,
Ciao.
thank you.